Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm, as always, your host, Nash Roberts. We got a lot to talk about today. Steph Curry extends his contract with the Warriors. The Milwaukee Bucks informed Brooke Lopez they have no intentions of trading him. Paul George responded to some recent Anthony Edwards is leaving the NBA and instead signing with the EuroLeague team. I think it's interesting just the dynamic of how things have changed recently in terms of how the worldwide perception of the NBA is. Because ultimately, the NBA is the biggest talent pool in the world for basketball, right? But, I mean, you see with Noah Lyles, world champions of what, right? Because technically, the NBA champions still call themselves the world champions when it's only one league that is based in North America, just all U.S. teams and then Toronto, right? But the best players in the world go to play in the NBA. That's how it's always been. But now you're seeing more guys that maybe they were given up on kind of in the NBA, like Evan Fournier recently, the past couple of years. He really struggled to get playtime, right? And so you see them go over to EuroLeague, and it's a varying success. Kemba Walker, I believe, wasn't doing very well, but there's also some guys that have been doing really well over there, I think. Even not EuroLeague, but Dwight Howard has been doing pretty good over in Taiwan, trying to recruit NBA players over there. But the thing with that is it's such a different game over there in the EuroLeague. So I think it's interesting because it's not the NBA versus the EuroLeague in terms of, these two are directly competing. I don't think it's that way, in my opinion. I see it as the EuroLeague is a very different product than the NBA, and you can entertain both mediums, and so seeing players cross over is more interesting to me when you view it in that fashion, because the NBA, Dennis Schroeder said it the other day, or the international basketball is a lot more methodical, technical, is what Schroeder essentially said, and KD, I forget what he said, but KD basically disrespected that, put that quote down from Schroeder. But overall, yeah, it's a more cerebral game over in Europe. You see guys come over from the EuroLeague to the NBA. I believe it was Miloš Teodosic. He's an all-time great passer, but he wasn't able to do much else in the NBA, so he was phased out, and that's because the NBA is focused more on athleticism. And you see in the Olympics as well, right? The USA, we've got this great talent pool, great athletes. But it's the community and the unity of the team sport that makes the other Olympic teams do so well, and also EuroLeague as a whole. And so I think it's interesting to compare the two leagues, not just in terms of competition, but in terms of different products. So I love seeing guys cross over. I'm going to be watching Evan Fournier for sure over in the EuroLeague. And, I'd love to see some more EuroLeague players come over to the NBA. It's just always an interesting Anthony Edwards basically came out and said that, hey, I don't think that the NBA players from 40 years ago are anywhere near as skilled as the players of today. And he's caught a lot of criticism for that. But my problem with that is this. We can all agree that the NBA as a talent pool as a whole is super talented right now. The parity across the league is unprecedented. A team for the Western Conference, say the Utah Jazz, for example, they can be the 14 seed or they can be the 7 seed. And there's just so much talent in the league today. And people have no problem acknowledging that. But it's when you compare them to older players, all of a sudden, hey, people have an issue with that. So I don't understand that criticism, because if you're going to say that, yeah, this is the most talented the NBA has ever been, look at the levels of parity around the league, everyone can hoop at a high level, then why are we saying, hey, Anthony Edwards can't go out and say that, these players from 40 years ago aren't as skilled as the players of today, when you yourself have acknowledged that? And Paul George, what he said on his pod was basically, yeah, the game has evolved. The game has grown over the years, but you still have to pay dues to the OGs. And, that's fair. You've got to pay respect to the ones that came before you. But even in your statement, Paul George admitted that, hey, yeah, the game has grown, and, we're getting more talented every single year. So I don't think that it's really justified for Anthony Edwards to be catching the flack that he's getting for his current statements, I believe he was justified. You can argue that he went about it not in the best way, saying, oh, everyone except MJ is getting cooked now, essentially. But overall, I think, as time goes on, we'll see, hey, maybe Ant was right. And in general, I don't think it's right to be criticizing him for something that we've all observed. Weird rhythm when playing for Team USA in the Olympics, and that's why he didn't make a jumper throughout the whole Olympic process. And I think this is just another thing in terms of how we view Jayson Tatum. Is he a superstar? Is he just borderline? And the fact that we're spoiled by guys like Curry and LeBron who have just continually been so dominant and redefining what it means to be a superstar. Jayson Tatum is a superstar in the modern NBA. However, he's close to not being. He lacks something in his game, and it's drive. I don't want to say aura has become so overused as a term to just point out certain guys like, oh, Jimmy Butler, right? It is a mentality overall. The drive, the will to compete, because Jayson Tatum, right, I don't want to question his passion for the game. He's worked very hard to get where he is now. But Tatum, a lot of times it seems like, he doesn't put in 100% effort. While a guy like even on his own team, Derek White, they're fully committed, locked in on every single play. And I think that's the difference between Jayson Tatum and in the Olympic process, the difference between him and a guy like, Derek White, Drew Holiday from his own team, right? These guys, while on the Boston Celtics, the priorities on that roster, they might go Tatum, then Jaylen Brown, then Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Derek White, that second tier of guys. On Team USA, that's a little bit different because Jayson Tatum, he also doesn't fit as well into the system. That's the biggest thing for me, right? Derek White is a role player, so he's going to be able to play well with guys who need the ball in their hands more. And it's the same thing with Drew Holiday. You don't bring him in for his offense. He's a solid offensive player, but you bring him in for the defense. But just going back to Tatum, the discussions around him being a superstar, that goes back to his drive, his motivation to do whatever a team needs to win. And Jayson Tatum, he say, fell out of rhythm. That's because, he's not used to not being the number one option. Even though Jaylen Brown was the Finals MVP, Jayson Tatum has always been the number one option for the Celtics. And so I think that was why he was out of rhythm for the Olympics, because now not only is he not the number one option, but he's out of the rotation because he can't be a role player, and that's both a good and bad thing, because sometimes your skill set just isn't complementary to being a role player, but his is, because he's got a long wingspan, he's tall, he can defend, he can do everything at a pretty high level. It's just him. It's a matter of him being willing to put in the effort and his motivation and his drive. And I think that's just the biggest thing in terms of Jayson Tatum and his superstar status. Or not. As of a couple of days ago, are signing Lonnie Walker. I think this is a huge addition for them because the Celtics, yes, they have depth, but most of that revolves around their primary starting five. That main depth is, and it extends to the 6th and 7th men as well. But it goes Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, and Derek White. Those are the main guys. And then also you've got crucial minutes from Al Horford especially, and then a little bit from Peyton Pritchard. So, yes, this team has a lot of depth in terms of, anyone on this team can defend, they can go get a bucket, they can do whatever you want to ask of them pretty much. But I think adding Lonnie Walker adds more depth overall, not to the game plan like they were set up around before, but to just have more versatility off the bench. Because, like I said, you run through that main 7 guys, but then what happens when they get fatigued, when they get tired? Lonnie Walker's going to go in there, and he is a super gifted scorer. I think this is a great pickup for the Boston Celtics. Lonnie, he struggled to find a home in this league. He started off with the Spurs, and then I believe he went to the Lakers, and then this past year was with the Nets. And he's always been a solid, steady scorer, but the efficiency hasn't always been there, although the last couple of years that he's really made strides towards that. I think Lonnie can be a great addition to a team. And when the LA Lakers started their season off when they had him a couple years ago, there was a point where Lonnie Walker was scoring 20 points a night. Now, that was a very small sample size, but that just shows that Lonnie, he can be a really good scorer, and I think that can be a very good addition for the Boston Celtics. So often you see a team after they win a championship, they're either A, complacent, like the Denver Nuggets, who got sent out in the second round this year, or they retool completely, like when the LA Lakers, they lost most of their roster and brought in some veterans. They brought in Russell Westbrook, and then that didn't work out at all. But I think, the Boston Celtics, LA, they got Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell the year after they won the championship. And I thought that was going to be a good addition at the time, but overall it just altered the flow of the team. They dealt with some injuries. They were the 7th seed, got knocked out in the first round. First time LeBron James had been a first-round exit his whole career. But overall, I like this subtle change of not doing too much, but also not doing too little that the Boston Celtics have done here. He signed a 1-year, $62 million extension with the Golden State Warriors. He will be 39 years old by the time that kicks in. And my thing with that is, yes, Steph Curry has shown longevity. He's really not shown much signs of decline. But that's not the problem. You don't worry about Steph's value, I don't think, because shooting, your jump shot is that's the last thing you're going to lose. You might lose your athleticism, but you're still going to have your jump shot. My issue with it for the Golden State Warriors is this. When Steph Curry is 39 years old, are you really going to be competing? Because your championship window, right now, it's gone. It's gone right now. You won in 2022, and slowly but surely, your window has slipped and slipped and slipped, and now you didn't even make the playoffs this year, and you haven't constructed a championship roster around Steph Curry, and now you're handicapping yourself by paying him so much. I think Steph will still be a good player by then, but for the Golden State Warriors, yeah, of course you're going to re-sign Steph Curry. You want him to be a lifer. But for your team, I don't know what this really does for you, because you're not going to be at a point of contention. You're going to have Jonathan Kuminga as your second option, and he's still developing. And you're having guys like Draymond Green, they're starting to regress. And I don't like the move for that reason. I think Steph will still be good, but I think the Golden State Warriors, they're just becoming more complacent. You saw a team like Chicago. They didn't have a championship team. You know what they did? They continued to keep DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine around, and they're fine with being in the play-in, or not even being in the play-in, but they're not bad enough to get a top pick in the lottery either. And I think the Golden State Warriors in a couple of years could be in that same situation. I think Steph deserves all the money in the world, but for Golden State Warriors organization, I don't think you're going to be able to build a championship roster around Steph Curry with the resources that you have at this point. So the 2022 ring, that might have been Steph Curry's last. And it's a good ring to end on, because Steph, he finally got his Finals MVP. He finally proved his critics wrong. But I think this contract, to me, it shows that your championship window with Steph Curry is over, and I think you should keep him, really, if nothing else, but for the fact that we don't see many lifers in the NBA now. But I think this shows that your championship window with Steph Curry is over. If you're complacency. The Milwaukee Bucks, it's all right that they want to run it back. I think the second year will be better, because you see that a lot, like with the Minnesota Timberwolves this past year. Their first year of Gobert, they were the 8th seed. They showed no progress at all. Oftentimes, it looked like they had gotten worse. But this year, you gave it time to settle, learn the game plan fully, and they were a really good team this year. I thought they really had a chance at winning the championship, although they ultimately bowed out to the Dallas Mavericks in 5. But for the Milwaukee Bucks, they've just informed Brook Lopez that they have no intentions of trading him. And I disagree with this, because in the modern league, you can't get complacent. And a guy like Brook Lopez, how irreplaceable is he really? And we saw this team last year. Lopez, a couple years ago, he was a top 3 player in DPOY voting. I think he might have even been the runner-up. Lopez is still a quality player, but I don't know that he's necessarily what your team needs right now. So, just going down the lineup, you've got Damian Lillard. who's going to be a shooting guard for that team. Probably, the Malik Beasley type. And, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. And to me, Lopez isn't that crucial to your team because Giannis himself is a great rim protector. And yes, Lopez can take some of that off of him by also being a quality rim protector. But it becomes a little redundant because guess what? Lopez doesn't have much of an offensive game compared to a guy like Giannis. So I think if you were able to get more value, I saw the Bucks did get Gary Trent Jr., which good on them for that. But in terms of value, I don't know. I think you could find more value in other areas like that shooting guard position. You've got guys like Malik, like Gary Trent, who can be inconsistent. So I think you're better served to find value for something like that as opposed to not even exploring avenues. Thank you for listening. This has been State of the Association, and as always, I'm your host, Nash Roberts.